Welcome to the Quiet Part Out Loud podcast. We're here today with Alison Jackson, managing partner of EY, board member, and very active mother of a family of 4. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
It's good to be here.
I'm going to go right into it. Our very first question. We ask this question of all of our guests just to get a little bit behind the bio to learn a little bit more about your story. So if your life was a movie, what would it be called? And tell us a little bit about the storyline.
So my movie would be called True to Her or True to Me, depending on what the perspective of the filmmaker is. And I'm sure no one would watch it, but it would be a great movie.
Oh, I'm sure everyone.
It would be about a career and a life that's built with a lot of intention and a whole bunch of crossroads where each decision was really true to me. I feel like that's what the culmination of my career has been. And not all of those decisions were what I maybe should have decided, but they were all the right decision for me. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit more.
So what would the plot be like? Can you tell us a little bit about your story? I don't want to read your bio out. So tell the audience about Alison.
Sure. On the face of it, my story looks very traditional. I've been with the same organization for 28 years, I think. That is a very long time. I don't think I ever intended to be here that long. But it's what's behind that headline that kept it interesting. Mm-hmm. So I was always moving forward in some way. I moved in different places. So I started my career in Ontario. I had the opportunity to move to Alberta for a couple of years, 2004 to 2006. Fell in love with it. I wanted to stay, but the opportunity was back in Ontario at that time. So I went back. 5 years later, I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. I moved back to Alberta, and this is absolutely now home. So aside from the personal family part, the actual career moves were also always changing. I would do something for 3-4 years and then say, oh, it's time for a change. So I've held many different roles, and they've added up to the spot that I currently occupy, the managing partner for the Calgary office. And I'm always looking for the next thing.
And you said it was all very intentional. So did any of those roles come, serendipitously, or were they all something that you planned for and then?
I always say about a plan, as soon as you make a plan, you are guaranteed that's not how it's going to happen. That's good to have a plan, but it's more directional than certain. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think serendipity or luck has definitely factored in. I would say my most recent role is one that came serendipitously. I knew that I always wanted to be in the managing partner role because I had seen others do that role in a way that called to me. But at the time when I made the career decision immediately before this role, I didn't know this role was going to become available. And so there was a bit of good fortune or serendipity in that.
And so how did that happen? Did someone kind of sponsor you into that role? Did it come up as a surprise?
You know what? It was a really clunky time in my career. And it's actually one of the moments that I'm most proud of. I was on a particular track. I'm a tax partner by background, so I'm a tax professional. And I spent many years becoming that technical, excellent tax practitioner. So in that capacity, I was the tax lead as well for what we called the energy segment at the time. So I was in a leadership role within the firm, and I was focused on tax, and I was, maybe I call it at the top of my game. And the next opportunity that would have come up would have been a very significant move. It would have been a move into the executive committee for EY. So a move up to that national level that everybody wants to get to that level. And I would love to have the opportunity to serve at that level as well. But I realized that my passion for tax wasn't what was fueling me anymore. And so to make that move from my tax leader role up to the national level, staying on that tax track or that particular career track wasn't the right thing for me. So I said it was a clunky time. I put up my hand and said, you know what? I'm kind of out. I'm out. I will, focus on client service. I will, do whatever it is I need to do, but that's not my track. And like I said before, I didn't know the managing partner role was going to come up. And within 3 months of me making that clunky, awkward decision of this isn't my future, this opportunity opened up.
So EY and consulting is a very high performance, high pressure environment. How do you manage a team and a consulting practice and a family? What are some interesting hacks and life tips you can share that kind of get you through that have been helpful to you?
There's one that it is, I'll call it a truth, and that is that I come first. And, we hear that all the time, right? You can watch many, many reels that tell you that you come first, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, that is a truth. And so for me, my calendar gets blocked with all of the things that I need to do in order to feel good about doing any other things. And the first thing is I need to get exercise. I need to get sleep. I need to be well fueled. I need to take care of my family. So, it's maybe a little bit cliche or trite, but that is the number one. I take care of me so that I take care of everybody else.
Yep. Are you an early riser?
I go to bed at 10 and get up at 6.
Great.
End of discussion.
Yeah.
And if I go to bed at 11, I sleep until 7. Like, I need my 8 hours of sleep. So, that block is pretty solid in the calendar.
Yeah. Anything else that you've done throughout your career that has been super helpful, whether it's from a leadership perspective or from a family perspective?
Yeah. Another thing that is kind of one of my foundational tenets is when I'm thinking about leadership, I'm thinking about how to interact with people. I always come back to this belief, or maybe it's a truth, that people want to be seen, recognized, heard, and everything else flows from there. So I use that with my family as well. Of course, they need to be seen and heard, okay? But it's the same in the office. I feel like, okay, however I define my team, they need to feel seen and heard by me.
Yeah.
And that can take, a variety of different, that can manifest in different ways, but that's the principle that I always come back to.
So in your role as managing partner, can you kind of tell us how you have developed your team and how you can kind of keep yourself grounded and your team connected? What are some of the things that you do as a leader to sort of curate that culture?
Yeah. Building on that idea of people want to be seen and heard, one of the things that I'm really big on is individual connection. So we talk about team. Sure, it's important to bring people together as a team, but we all know that the bigger the group gets, the almost the less you can accomplish, or and certainly the less connection you can have with people. So I find large group meetings are good for conveying information, maybe setting a stage, but something that I do with consistency is connect with people outside of those large groups. Just really quickly, right? We use Teams in the office, so maybe it's just a little Teams chat, like, are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Do you have any other input? It's not that I don't want to solicit that kind of engagement in a large group meeting, but I just really believe in the power of the individual connection and making sure that people know that if they have something to say, they can reach me. I'm available. I'm in service to them for us all to get to the right spot.
Yeah.
So a combination of bringing a team together and also in really staying connected one-to-one as much as possible.
And is your team hybrid or in office or remote? How do you guys work?
Yeah, we're a mix. So we have not mandated, that you must be in 5 days a week. Certainly not. We have a very strong recommendation on 3 days a week because we know that people need to connect in person from time to time. And because we have a very, call it leveraged model, meaning we bring in a lot of students and young people, and we're really in the business of building their careers, we know that they need to spend more time in office. So naturally, we end up being in quite a bit, but I like to think that it's by choice, right? So if I get up in the morning and it's a better day for me to be at home, there's no guilt, that's fine.
Yep.
But in order to keep connected and keep people growing, there's a lot of in-office time.
Great. What types of strategies have you developed to curate kind of an inclusive culture or address behaviors that may threaten inclusivity in the workplace?
Right. So I'm going to answer like in two tiers. So there's the formal part, or what have I done to put my mark on the culture as, how do we make inclusion front and center? And then there's the informal. So on the formal side, we have an inclusion steering committee. I'm the champion for that. I'm consistently making sure that all of our, what we call business resource groups, are getting differential access to events, career building, knowledge about what's going on in the office, that they're connected to each other and that they have community. Because we're a big organization, it's easy to get lost. So kind of formally, I'm a champion for inclusion. And as a result, I like to think that all of my partners and business leaders realize that that's something they need to be paying attention to as well. Then informally, it goes back to what I said before, those individual connections, is keeping up with the people that are leading those business resource groups, making sure that their careers are progressing, because that's how we kind of put our money where our mouth is, or how we demonstrate to people that, yes, inclusion matters and inclusion will manifest in career success. So I see it as really closely tied to the career journeys of the individuals that want to take a leadership role in those areas. And by advancing their careers, then we can demonstrate to everybody else that this is working.
It appears to me that consulting as an industry is fairly gender agnostic. Have you experienced that, or have you had any run-ins with the gender question? This wouldn't happen to me if I was a man. Kind of question.
I think, again, there's two tiers, on the face of it, incredibly diverse populations that we have in our business. And it's great to see diversity, not just of, visible differences, but diversity in educational background, diversity in life experience, hobbies and interests. So yes, there's a lot of diversity in our business. Where the challenge comes is evaluating performance from a diverse lens. Right? Making sure that people who don't look like the people who are evaluating them, that they are understood and that their contributions are valued. So we understand that as kind of the fundamental challenge with diversity. My own experience would be, I came into this career not seeing any barriers. EY started down the path of Professional Women's Network probably 30 years ago. Well, no, not quite, maybe 25 years ago. Very early in my days, I was kind of one of the first pilot people. They're going to do these pilot projects. I'm early in my career. Okay, we're getting all the women together. Okay, what are we talking about? And I thought, what the heck are we doing? Like, this is so... What's the problem? Maybe that's my mom's problem or something. That's a different generation. So I didn't see it. As the years went on, as I became more senior in my career, then I really could see it. And I could see it when I was sitting in these performance review meetings. I could see it when people who were evaluating performance were misunderstanding what the folks that didn't look like them, gender or otherwise, what they were bringing to the table, that they weren't valuing the contributions the same way. So I would say, yes, I have many, many years of experience of seeing these gaps and working to overcome them, largely behind the scenes, working to advocate, working to correct misconceptions, sometimes leaving meetings and thinking, what the heck was that? I will admit, you can't always know exactly what to say in the moment, but over the years, I think it's gotten better. It's gotten easier.
And have you sort of developed, that bravery or that, thing that you will say in those meetings, or do you change it based on the circumstances?
I find that I just need to say something. So it's not like I got the perfect one-liners, I've got the perfect thing. But what I've realized is that when I hear something that doesn't sit quite right, I just need to say, right? And give myself a second, a minute, or just say, wait a second. Something about what you just said isn't sitting right with me, right? Just like that 5-10 seconds to be able to hold space for everyone to pause and reflect. And then together we can figure it out, So I used to think that, it was up to me to point out what the problem was with what was said. And now I realize it's just okay to hold space, to reflect on what maybe wasn't quite right.
Right.
And everybody in the room generally appreciates that time to think, was there a bias in there that we weren't catching? Did we all just do that? Right, that kind of thing. So it's not so much about what to say, but certainly, yes, having the bravery to just say, wait a second, I don't know if we got that quite right.
Yeah. I love that approach too, because it's not an immediate comment, right? It's just silence to let everybody think about it a little bit. That's great.
Yeah, very powerful. It does work.
I want to change a little bit to career journey.
Yeah.
You have been with EY for 28 years. I think there's a stat that in our lifetimes now, the generation, whatever generation, will change jobs 10 times. I think that might actually be higher now. So you're a bit of an enigma that you have been with the same company for so long. So can you tell us about the thoughtful aspect around that, about staying with EY? Have you ever thought, I should leave, I should stay? How did that go for you?
Yeah, yes. I have thought. I mean, it hasn't all been a glorious, one is smooth sailing trajectory. Yeah, definitely have thought about leaving. But let me tell you a little bit more about my particular journey, because I feel like maybe I've already had 7 or 8 careers. So maybe we'll count them. All right.
Yeah,
so
let's count them.
I started actually at Coopers & Lybrand, a firm that doesn't exist anymore. It merged with Pricewaterhouse, became PwC. So another one of the big 4. So I started there, did 3 years there. I moved to EY when I knew I wanted to go be in tax. I spent 7 years honing my kind of tax skills. I didn't know all the tax answers. You never do, but I knew that I could figure out what the answer was. Could do the research kind of thing. So then I was looking for the next challenge. Then I moved to Edmonton for 2 years into kind of like a semi-leadership role. I was one of the more senior people there. That was great. Loved it. Moved back to Ontario for 5 years. Again, semi-leadership role just based on where I was at the time and the other people around me. Then moved to Alberta in 2011. A couple years later, stepped into the tax role. So we're up to 6. Stepped out of that role 4 or 5 years later, and the OMP, or the managing partner role, came up. So that's 7. So I'm at 7 different careers within that 28-year block, or I guess 6 within that career block, and 1 outside of it with Coopers & Lybrand. So there's definitely opportunity to keep it interesting. And like I say, it's not like, oh my gosh, I've been doing the same thing for 28 years. But each one of those moves was very intentional.
Yeah.
It was realizing that, okay, I'm plateauing here. I'm not growing. I'm not inspired anymore. And at those times, often at those times where I realized, okay, I don't know what the future is, that's the moment that I would look outside the firm.
Okay.
So there have been times that I have very seriously looked outside of the firm, and I will tell you and I will tell anyone else, and I often do, that that's the best time spent. Looking at opportunities around you is such a productive exercise, because at the end of that journey, you're going to choose. And it doesn't matter if you choose to stay or if you choose to go, because you have chosen. And it's the power of choice that puts the wind in your sails. So even though I have chosen to stay, those journeys of looking outside, what could it be? What am I looking for? I've always come back to EY. It's a great place to work. It has a lot to offer. I've always come back there by choice. And like I say, it's the power of choice that kind of lends itself to that next burst of energy for the next opportunity.
And it kind of facilitates some self-reflection, right? So it allows you to figure out what you're looking for, what challenges you're after.
Definitely.
I love that.
And I'll tell you one other thing that I have realized from moving. Moving is a powerful thing, right? You take yourself from one environment and you put yourself into another environment. And you can do that, of course, by moving organizations, companies. I did it staying with the organization and changing geographies a couple of different times. And the interesting thing about that is you realize that you're the constant. So if you put yourself in a new environment and you're having the same experience, then you can realize, oh, it's me, right?
I'm the problem.
I am the problem. I am contributing to this problem.
Yeah.
So like I say, some people get that realization because they're moving from organization to organization. I was able to get that organization, or to get that realization, to diagnose the things about me that were contributing to whatever dissatisfaction I was experiencing by moving within the organization, but changing the environment.
Yeah. This came up in our conversation with Heather Colbert around the exact same topic. So do you leave if you're overly ambitious? Do you kind of wait it out a little bit? Do you leave? And when you choose to stay, what does the conversation look like when you're still looking for that next challenge? So did you talk to somebody? Did you just look at internal postings? What was your approach to that?
I'm probably not the poster child for how to do it right. I spend a lot of time in my own head with my husband or trusted confidants, kind of venting and circling on that. So what I would tell other people to do is to talk to somebody in the organization to get some perspective. I probably didn't do that as much as I should have. And in part because I think it really comes down to trust, right? If you don't have those trusted relationships at whatever age and stage you're at in your career, then it can be really uncomfortable. And you can actually be putting somebody else in the organization in a really uncomfortable place if they don't have the skills. I know that I have the skills to help other people with those conversations. So then I feel very empowered to say, look, talk to me because I can handle it, right? I know what to do and what not to do. But it is a really tricky thing. You need to know yourself, you need to know the organization, and you need to know the who you can trust, really.
I want to talk about the CIWB Awards. So you were our professional services winner for the Calgary Influential Women in Business Awards. So congratulations again. And a quote that came up from you quite a bit during that time was, in order to be exceptional, you have to be willing to be the exception. And I think being the exception, it sounds glamorous and it sounds really shiny, but it can be lonely and it can come with friction. So can you tell us about a time where you knew you kind of had to step into that and be brave and be the exception, and what came along with it and how you'd kind of dealt with that friction or that loneliness?
Yeah. Maybe that goes back to my last comment about being a bit of a lone, up in my head. Maybe there's going to be a tie in here. I don't know. But I would say, let me tell the story about how I came to realize that part of not following the rules and for me, why that's being necessary. So when I finished university, I jumped into my career, and I knew myself well enough to know that I was going to go all in. That's just who I am, right? I'm all in whatever I choose to do. But I also knew myself well enough to know that I needed something outside of my career to create balance. So I had kind of flirted with the sport of triathlon, and so I went all in, and I started training and racing, and ultimately did a number of Ironman. Well, in order to accomplish both of those objectives at the same time, which I call balance, um, I was in Ontario at the time. I was in Kitchener-Waterloo, and there was a very limited supply of pool space. Right? You got to swim if you're a triathlete. And the time that was available to swim was 12 to 2. 12 to 2, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Well, 12 to 2 is the time that you're probably supposed to be in the office, right? So from a very early age, I needed to be the exception to accomplish the objective that I had set out for myself. And doing that and finding ways to demonstrate that flexibility and accountability go hand in hand, that performance doesn't mean sitting in the office, that, finding ways to demonstrate that and then to put words to that started very early in my career. So I did get up and leave the office at 11:30 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I did come back around 2 with wet hair, tied up in a bun, still professional, but not the norm. I was definitely the exception. And people thought it was funny or fun, or they didn't really care. But from that moment forward, I started looking at things from like a blank sheet of paper. As opposed to looking at what was done, I looked at what do I need to be possible in order to accomplish the things that I need to accomplish. So by the time I came around to having children many, many, many years later, that was easy peasy, right? Like I had already established that habit, that being insulated from judgment around being the exception, because it's just the way I was going to do it. And it's not that I didn't care. It's not that people's slights or opinions or judgments didn't matter to me. It's that I knew they didn't matter enough for me to change who I was and what I needed to be successful. So for me, it started very, very early on.
Yeah, I love that story. And not attaching the outcome of your work to the number of hours that you're working or the time at which you're working.
Yes, I would say the time at which I was working.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was going to work. As long as I had taken care of everything that was important to me, I knew that I would give the bulk of the rest of the time to my work. Not everybody's wired that way, right? I get that. But that comes back to knowing who you are, how you're going to approach things. And then, like I say, that blank sheet of paper has really helped me so much over the years. Because whether it's children, which is kind of where a lot of people start trying to develop those boundaries, I had the good fortune of starting from sport, or starting from something that didn't have as much social stigma attached to it. But being able to start with that blank sheet of paper and say, okay, this is how I'm going to craft my day. Oh, this is how I'm going to craft this week. This is how I'm going to craft the next 6 months. It's just really empowering.
How do you plan your life out? Do you time block? Do you plan in months? How do you think about your day-to-day and then the plans that you have for the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I am constantly iterating, as I think most of us are. I remember when kids were younger, then it was, every 4 months or every 6 months, it's different. Like before they were in school, oh, they've got this activity and then that activity, and you're trying to find what their spot is. So for me, those things go in the calendar. I was going to say first, they go in the calendar second, actually. The time that I need goes in the calendar first. And what that means to me is the time to be active. If I'm not active, then I don't sleep well, then the whole world falls apart. So I need to have time in my calendar to, whether it's go to the pool or hit a yoga class or ride my trainer in the my bike in the basement, whatever, go out for a walk. Those things go in first. And they are usually like conceptual blocks, right? Like, okay, we're going to block 6 to 9 a.m., right? And something's going to happen in that block of time that's going to be good. It's going to check that box. Then the family stuff goes in the calendar. Then I do put in some kind of strategic blocks, like I block the Friday afternoon. Look, I don't want to have new intake after, say, 1:30 on a Friday.
I love that.
Right? I don't want new intake. I'm happy to, work through, get things sorted, put things on the weekend pile. And then I also play a little bit at this point in time, a little bit with afternoon blocks. Again, I don't want to have new intake coming at me after, say, 4:00. I need time to process everything that's happened in that day. So that's kind of how I go about it. And of course, I'm always willing to give up those blocks, but at least it's conscious. It's not unconscious, right? It's not like, oh my gosh, it's 6:00 and I don't know, where I'm at or where I'm going. So that's how I approach it right now. And it's been that way for probably decades, but the blocks are always moving and shifting and changing and trying to accommodate what it is I think I need to check all the boxes.
That's a great idea. I love the no new intakes blocks. That's a fantastic idea.
Magic.
Yeah.
I've only been doing that on a Friday for maybe a year, maybe two. And probably it's after coming back from the pandemic. Where there were no blocks, right? There were no barrier. It was just like 24/7. And it was like a luxury, Oh, okay, I've made it in my career when I actually block off a Friday afternoon and don't feel bad about it. But now I realize it's different. It's not about feeling bad about blocking time. It's about being strategic, that's actually a really good move. And so I highly recommend it.
You mentioned the pandemic, so I want to ask, I know you did some work with IWF about how women were disproportionately impacted in the workplace over the pandemic. Can you tell me a little bit about that work that you did with them?
Yes. And yes, I will. And I will tell you right up front that I am happy that my worst fears did not manifest. So when the pandemic hit, I knew how women would approach things based on experience, and that it would be different than how men would approach things. I felt I knew that women would stay head down. They would be diligent about all of their responsibilities, but because they weren't visible, they wouldn't maybe be as top of mind as maybe men. Men are much more, in my experience, socially connected within the workplace. They're mindful of their power, their position power. They're mindful of their networks and bosses and things like that. And women just want to do a good job, right? They just want to get to work and get it done and move on to the next thing. So being part of the International Women's Forum and challenging ourselves, what can we do during this really unusual time, being the pandemic, to support women? I put this on the table. I said, look, I'm very concerned about the biases that could take shape around, again, performance evaluation, where women are not going to be seen and heard during this period of time because they're off the radar. And how is that going to manifest? And oh my goodness, we're going to set ourselves back 15 years of progress. Again, I'm happy to have been wrong in that didn't manifest. But I will say that I do believe that thinking about it, doing some work around it, putting it out in the universe, if you will, kind of holding space for everyone to realize that that's a very real risk, was helpful, because we didn't get to that point and we otherwise could have.
Was there any interesting findings through that work that did manifest, that did come out of that work?
Yes, actually, I was delighted to learn that more organizations in this country have the checks and balances that we hope that they have. I didn't realize that. And we worked with a couple of other organizations that had some really solid research in the area. And again, I think elevating the issue and getting everyone to pause and think about it was really helpful. And what we learned is that, okay, organizations are really committed to getting the answer right because they know that they need diversity. And it's no longer what I feared it was, which was like, okay, a matter of convenience or maybe a checkbox. No, it felt to me like Canada, nationally, speaking very generally, but based on the data that we had, has realized the power of diversity. As certainly from a gender perspective, where it's easy to observe who is male, female, but hopefully that mindset permeates into other dimensions of diversity as well.
Do you feel like there is anything more that could be done based on that work that our country, knowing that there's this pushback on DEI happening right now? Is there anything else more that we can do from your observation?
Definitely. So I think this pushback has two buckets of potential, we'll call it, and without being too rosy about it. But we've talked previously about this pushback gives an opportunity to get rid of some of the performative things that are being done and really focus on things that add business value. Because in adding the business value, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where DEI initiatives really take root. The performative stuff can come and go. So that's one thing.
What do you mean by business value? So can you give an example for the audience? Like what types of things are performative and what types of things really add value?
Yes.
That you've seen?
So performative things would be like, oh, this is Asian Heritage Month, so we should have a potluck.
Change our social media icon.
We should change our social media icon. There you go. Maybe we should have a potluck. We should check the box in some sort. Business value is things like, okay, EY has an Entrepreneur of the Year program. Business value is challenging each of our business resource groups to identify entrepreneurs who represent their community to come into the program. That makes the program more rich. That elevates the entrepreneurs. That accelerates the careers of the folks in the business resource group. That's the integration of DEI into our business. That's just one example. Another one would be community engagement. I think most large corporations have community engagement initiatives. What I like to do is, again, get our business resource groups identifying what are the community engagement opportunities that would resonate with their community. Again, that gives them a leadership skill of cultivating those relationships, bringing it forward. It gets us active in community in a different way and maybe having greater awareness and knowledge about the communities and the cultures. So it's integrating DEI with the business.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask the final question of the day. Surprise. I ask this of everyone. What are your top 3 favorite books right now? It can be right now. It can be of all time. If you're not a book girly, it could be podcasts. Top 3 favorite books.
Gosh, who has time to read a book, really? Audiobook? No, there are some that stand out to me. I don't know if Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, however you say that. That is, I would say, must-read material for everyone at some point in your life. I came into that, I call it mid-career, and I came into that book really trying to answer a question in my personal life, and that book held the answer for me. So I'll highly recommend that book.
Okay.
Podcast, it's not even a podcast, it's like an audio recording of how to win friends and influence people. Who is that? It's Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, right?
Is it Dale Carnegie?
It's some Carnegie.
We'll find out.
Okay, we'll find out. Anyway, somebody find out. That I listened to on audio tape back in the day when we still had audio tapes. Like I think I put a tape in a cassette player in my car or something ridiculous like that. But that is like age-old truths in that. And yeah, I'm going to say something totally ridiculous. The Notebook.
I love it.
The Notebook, because everyone needs some romance and some I don't know what you call it, just escapism, right? Heartwarming. So like you balance off the really serious and constructive stuff with something that just makes you smile, and feel good.
Yep. I love it. Well, thank you for joining me today. This has been a really great conversation. It's great to see you again. And we hope to have you back another time.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure. Thank you.